We are 48 schools across 14 cities, but together we are one Shawnee mission, and we are all in.
Welcome back to Shawnee Mission Mic'd Up. This is episode 7, everyone. I am your host, the proud superintendent of the Shawnee Mission School District. My name is Mike Schumacher.
Yeah, and your proud co-host, Brittany Gonzer. Good to be back.
Welcome back.
Episode 7.
Let's do this.
Lucky number 7.
Lucky 7, and what a great topic that we're going to bring to our community for episode 7. Got some great guests we're going to get to in a second, but like always, let's wrap up or talk about our last episode. So,
we got to talk about food last time, so that was a lot of fun. And we got to learn a lot about, food service and Shawnee Mission and what that programming and really the instruction that goes along with it looks like. A lot of great information, a lot of fun. Anything that stood out to you?
I like you mentioned the instruction. They kept saying the food classroom, the nutrition teacher kept bringing it back to education and how they impact education. I love that. Yeah,
I'd never really thought of it that in depth like that, but Grace really did a nice job of highlighting all the things that we're teaching in the food service classroom every day. I'm like, she's 100% right. That's very cool.
I agree. And Sarah, what a great representative.
So much passion. Wow. I want to eat lunch there every day.
I know. Clearly, she's building wonderful relationships with her students and really believes all in with Shawnee Mission. She's been in Shawnee Mission since pre-kindergarten.
You cannot be more all in than that.
My goodness. So yeah, what a great episode. And hopefully a lot of people listened to that and got a lot out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also learned just how hard that job is day in and day out. I only did it for an hour and a half, couple of hours, and I was worn out. So shout out to all of our food service employees. They are working hard. They're having fun while they do it, but it's definitely hard work. So
for sure. And as we've always mentioned, anything that we do in Shawnee Mission ought to serve student achievement. They clearly are. They're keeping our kids' bellies full and ready to learn. So what a great service. So thanks to Grace, thanks to Sarah. Awesome episode.
Yeah, learned a lot, had some fun too.
Yeah, so we're being a little quicker with this first block because we have a lot to get to in this episode with Dr. Ziegler and Memo. So with that, let's let you guys introduce yourself. Dr. Z, why don't you start off?
Thanks for having us today to talk about a great topic, and we're going to talk about attendance. I'm Christy Ziegler. I serve proudly as the Chief of Student Services, as well as Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Shawnee Mission School District.
Great.
I am Memo Rodriguez. I serve as the South Feeder System District Attendance Specialist, so I deal with elementaries, middle schools, and high school there at the South District, or the south side of the district.
And you're stationed at South High School, is that right?
Yes, I split my time between South and the middle school daily. Okay. I try to see both schools.
And Dr. Z, I'm sure we're going to get to this, the number of attendance specialists and so on, and how they're placed throughout the district. But just kind of a little lead in there. So before I throw it to Dr. Gonzer, we're going to break this out by a couple different sections. So 4 different sections. First one, we're going to give a recap of last year's podcast. Yeah. Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Higgins appropriately tackled this last year. Yeah. They spoke with Cecilia Leon. Got to slow down when I say that. And she shared some incredible information. You want to start with?
Yeah. I think that's really where a lot of this conversation started, and we started involving the community, and just some great information was shared there. So just to kind of clarify for everyone right out the gate, chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10% or more of the enrolled school days. So it comes out to about 1 day every 2 weeks when you think about it like that. So we kind of all got on the same page in that last episode about what chronic absenteeism means. And there were a lot of different categories that were shared that were some of the causes behind those absences. So one was things like transportation, right? Physical barriers or lack of access to things. Also healthcare was in there. The second was aversion, right? Avoiding school for some reason, right? That we learned there are lots of different reasons that could be, but that aversion was one of those. And then disengagement, right? So I think that was really a popular conversation coming out of the pandemic, right? The context of COVID. We saw a lot of disengagement. And that wasn't just with school, right? That was with a lot of things. Right. I think that was common. And then those misconceptions, right? Just not understanding how important attendance really is for learning. So that alone was a great conversation, just really thinking through those reasons why our students are sometimes absent.
Agreed. And so clearly they set the stage last year, Dr. Higgins and Dr. Hubbard, along with Cecilia, in defining for our community what chronic absenteeism is And then what are those root causes, or what are those specific things that are leading to that? So I think maybe the first question I'll ask you guys, is that what we're seeing too? Dr. Gonzer mentioned 4 general areas, maybe either one of you or both of you. Is that kind of what we're seeing in our students in this year as well?
I definitely agree with that. I think we spoke earlier, like a lack of motivation by the student, and the chronic absentee student always seems to have some underlying issues that are not seen, and that's kind of our job, along with the social workers, is trying to figure out what's going on that we're not able to see. So sometimes I'm able to crack that or peel that onion, and other times the social worker will let me know what's going on. But just getting to know the student and their families kind of helps out sometimes. So
that's great. Dr. Sig?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've been focused on a long time here with the last strategic plan and into the current one on focusing on belonging. And I think that's where we've come into this work, is really looking at what is preventing students from coming to school. Mm-hmm. And is it because there's an aversion, or they just don't feel connected to their school, or that there is that person that's waiting there to be their champion? So it's another layer to that work that we're really excited to have our attendance specialists be a part of, and really envision them to come into this role to serve as an advocate, really. There's a misnomer that these positions are about truancy. We are not truancy specialists. We're not officers of truancy. We are truly about advocating for our students and families to make sure that we're meeting their needs.
So you kind of teed up my next question for you. Before we start to talk about specifically those attendance specialists, what else are we doing in the district? And maybe before that, as we were concocting this position, think about the naming, right? Because we talked about what to call it. So maybe talk about the naming of the position, and then what else are we doing beyond the attendance specialists in the buildings?
Well, I think the intentionality of the naming was getting at that root cause where there are barriers sometimes that are preventing our students or families from connecting with schools, and we didn't want to have another barrier in place, right? We want to be about taking those barriers down. So that was the first thought that came into this work and the position.
That's great. And then we're doing some things just around like data collection, things like that, aren't we?
So another piece is starting to look at our present state and where we're at with our attendance and our data and how we had processes in place. We have an amazing group of individuals that are attendance clerks in our high schools and middle schools. And then at the elementary, our attendance people are also our amazing secretaries that are doing everything to run the offices and support our families. And my goodness, they have a lot to do on a day-to-day basis, a lot of phone calls, a lot of communication. So we really started to dig into the roles that they play and how they have been supported and how we could do better in having just some processes and procedures in place to help them do their work. And we're learning as we go. These positions started last March into April, so we're still pretty much in the infancy. No one's been with us a year yet. Memo's one of our veterans, so he came on last year. But we do have 6 positions in place, and part of that work was putting a handbook in place for our attendance, which helps guides our principals and our attendance personnel.
That's perfect. So we're really circling around this issue from a lot of different angles, so that's great. So the next block we want to talk about are the attendance specialists themselves.
Let's kind of dive into this role a little bit. You kind of mentioned this is not truancy, right? That's not what we're really talking about here. It's supposed to be a support. So what are some of the background and experiences of some of these individuals? So attendance specialists, like what kind of experiences do they bring with them? Maybe Memo, you could speak to that.
Myself, I'm a former geologist.
Okay.
But what I did do while I was a geologist was I always mentored high school students as a coach. So I'd been coaching for the last 20 years, and I kept checking on grades, making sure attendance was good, talking to parents, talking to my student athletes. And over time, I just found myself sending kids to college, and I really loved doing this. And my sister had heard about that, and she recommended this job, and I really loved hearing what they were doing or wanting to do, and I kind of jumped right in. And then I find myself with my associates that I work with, and they're very experienced. We got a couple former truancy officers. I believe they were former truancy officers from Missouri, 17 years, 13 years, very experienced. So I started just kind of learning what they were doing, how they do things. And this job is definitely, you have to be a self-starter. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. Every day I'm busy. Business is good because kids are finding ways to get out of school.
Wow.
Okay.
But I also heard relationships, communication,
Definitely.
love for kids, experience with kids, having that caring, trusted adult. So, Christy, to you, tell us about those other 5 folks and what were you looking for?
We were looking for people that had the personality, the will, and the skill to be connectors, right? And a heart for kids, just like you said. So we do have people that have come from social work backgrounds. We have people that have come from decades of experience working as a peer coach, peer mentor, peer motivator, behavioral backgrounds. We're very fortunate that we have a great skill set. We have someone that had been working as a long-term substitute and had come into that role, coming back from starting a family, and had worked in business before and fell in love with being in schools. So we have a diverse skill set in the team, but there is a heart for kids across every single member of the team.
Yeah. So I want to spend a little bit, do you mind spending a little bit more time on this? So you guys meet often? You guys meet as a team, I'm guessing?
Every week.
Every
Weekly.
week? Yeah. So I don't know, Memo, why don't you talk with us about, what does your day look like beyond, that PLC? I think we would call it a professional learning community that you guys have once a week. Maybe talk a little bit about that, what do you guys talk about, but then what does your rest of your days look like?
My day starts with me printing off an unexcused absence report at the high school. And that list is usually about 2 pages long, it's anywhere from 75 to 100 names on it. And I'm following up on any student that missed half the day or more. Half the day meaning it's counted as a full absence. So I'm following up to make sure this student was absent, or did a teacher miss him while he was at the bathroom or whatever. Maybe he was late. If that is the case, then I have him email his teacher and fix that problem. If not, I'm trying to figure out why we're missing days, because we should only be missing days if a child is sick or they have some other obligation. So if I can't find that student, if they had missed that day as well, I usually reach out to the parents, or if that student is a repeat customer, as I like to call them, I follow up with the parent. If I can't get a hold of the parent, I leave an email as well as a voicemail. I'm constantly trying to reach out to parents if these students are missing continuous days.
Yeah.
I usually work about half the day, about 5 hours at the high school, because it is 1,500 students plus. And then when I have time, I go to the middle school because it's about half that size. And the problem's not as big there,
Right.
But, I also work on the 10, 7, and 5-day warning letter list at the high school and at the middle school. So when kids reach that, I look over that list and try to see which students are missing unexcused compared to excused. If they're sick, I say it for myself even. If I'm sick, I can't go to work. If they're sick, stay home, get better. But if they're missing unexcused time, I want to find out why. I want to talk to the parents, find out if sometimes the parent's not available. I talk to the student, what's going on. It could be just something as, we had to go to the emergency room last night. I get a lot of that. Or I was sick, my parent forgot to call me out. So really it's just a lot of touching base, communicating, and trying to build relationships,
Right.
trying to figure it out.
So, Chrissy, I heard Memo talk about some reactive things that we have to do as a school system, right? But he also mentioned talking to the parents about the why, right? So I'm guessing with your PLC meetings that you're talking about some of that with the other 6 or the other 5?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the why and how we can support buildings and families with greater communication and resources to understand that we know at the elementary level, if a child's not coming to school, if they're missing 1 or 2 days a month, those absences start to add up. And when you're learning to read and you're falling behind, then that's the make or break of whether or not you're going to be reaching your proficiency goals, right, with your grade level peers. And the research is pretty clear that when that starts to happen, it becomes a stackable. It's hard to come back from, right? So that can also impact what happens in middle school and also high school graduation success. So that's why it is important to me at school. And we know we want our kids to have the best academic and social emotional experience possible, right? That's a wildly important goal for us. So we want to be there to support it. In addition to some of those reactive pieces, though, our attendance specialists and also the building teams or student service teams are providing that positive check-in. So like Memo will come to a team meeting and talk about, hey, I got to go check in with a kid and there's a high five in the hallway because he's coming to school now, or they are here. So we're doing those positive supports as well.
That's great.
Nice. So can you guys tell us what are some of the early successes? I mean, well, it hasn't been around for a long time yet, but what are some of the celebrations you're having so far? And what are the things that are proving to be your greatest challenges?
I think some of the early celebrations, I brought this up on the last PLC meeting, was I did a month-to-month comparison on our chronic absentee percentage with some certain students that I'm already tracking. And I found out from September to October, I had a good amount of students that improved. So
awesome.
I instantly just took that list, wrote it down, started walking the hallways. And when I found these kids, I pulled them out and I was like, hey, I just wanted, and they know me. They're like, what I do now, right away. They're on defense, and I'm like, no, this is a good talk. I wanted to congratulate you. You cut your percentage. Some students, they cut them in half. So that's great.
Yeah.
And it just, it just proves that if we're continuously on these kids and showing them they belong, showing them that we want them here, that it is going to work.
Keep reaching out, keep
Yes.
letting them people notice when you're not here. Right?
Yes.
I love how you're saying bugging them, but it's bugging them like a coach.
I will harass them.
Right, 100%.
I will harass them.
Yeah.
And we get that as
Someone
parents,
cares, and they're
100%.
And I harass the parents too.
Yeah. Someone is noticing that you're not here. So that's a huge thing. Yeah.
I think another thing that is a success or a win for us is as we approach this as a team and not individual positions. As a team, we're seeing that some families that have struggled to motivate their children to get out of bed and get to school, we've been able to get them in the door by accessing our school nurse or a social worker or a counselor or whoever that person is that student will connect with. And if we can get them in the door, then usually we can keep them in the door and they can have a successful day. But sometimes the hardest part goes back to that aversion, is motivating myself to get up, to want to go to school. But once I get there, I know I can be okay, and there are people that'll take care of me.
What a tremendous life skill to build too, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Biggest challenge, like now, and maybe something that you're thinking, we're going to have to continue working on this year over year over year.
Yeah, I think the ongoing challenge is continuing. Well, I think first I'm gonna be positive and be ridiculously positive that
Please.
we are promoting in our students how they can use their voice to tell us what we need to know to grow and do better. And I think that speaks to how we are structuring our curriculum and our real world learning opportunities in our schools that make school a place that's relevant, right, for our learners. I think that helps motivates us to get to school as one aspect. I think that will continue to serve us well with that mindset in the future. I think the challenge that we have is continuing to work to figure out how to support our families that are experiencing some of those barriers. I think transportation has always kind of been a pinch point, and that's something we continue to look at and work on. But there are other issues too. In the strategic plan, we have the opportunity to work on increasing mental health supports for students and families and accessing more community resources. And I think that will help in this area too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Nema? Just challenges that you face on a daily basis?
I think one of the biggest challenges at the high school level is there's maybe not enough consequences to kids that are missing too much school. They know they can miss. They're smart enough to just pass those classes. And, there's a fairness to it. The students showing up every day, lunch pailing it. And then there's the other kids that are smart enough to beat the system. I don't like that, but that's one of the challenges we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's fair to bring up. And actually, we're going to get to this when we talk about our student superintendent advisory group. But maybe another question on this section?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've heard all these connections that we're making with the strategic plan, and the more I learn about this, the more obvious those connections become. Anything there that you guys have learned along the way as well, or anything that's really stood out to you? If we weren't even doing this on purpose, but man, we're really making an impact in this way, or making some connections with things.
I don't know anything that stood out. I'm really excited about the current strategic plan because I see the synergy. I do. Like when I started hearing the action teams and what we have to work with, it all fits.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing as I hear from you guys today. I'm like, wow, I hadn't even thought about how those things connect, but this really does speak to a lot of the different pieces and things that we're discussing in the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you seeing a reduction in chronic absenteeism? I'm putting you on the spot. I don't even know the answer to this.
I believe our last percentage was 4% down.
We were just about 5.
We're just about 5. So we're right there.
That's great.
So, yeah.
So, Dr. Z, you mentioned the strategic plan. You mentioned WIGs. Awesome district administrator doing that. Perfect. Because that's what we're about. We're keeping score, and that's chronic absenteeism is one of our WIGs, and so it's something that we're keeping track of, and that we need to have an impact on. Our community expects that out of us. So,
Yeah, and all the things that we offer and supports, right? None of it, we can't put any of it in place if kids aren't in the seats, right?
we got to get them in there. Yeah, we can't do anything until we get them there. So that's great. So we mentioned the superintendent student advisory group. All superintendents, I'm hoping, have this group. I met with our group for the first time about a couple weeks ago, and we talked about chronic absenteeism. And those of you who are watching on YouTube can see kind of a summary of what we talked about. We asked really 3 leading questions: why students don't come to school, what can we do to impact that, and what can we do around awareness and mindset. And so we've kind of preloaded this with Dr. Ziegler and Memo as well. As you guys are looking at this, any quick takeaways? Or you're like, yep, that makes 100%, we're seeing that, or something maybe that surprises you as well?
One of the things that I was surprised to see, not necessarily surprised, but surprised that our students were in tune with this, is on why students don't come to school. And they stated themselves that on late start days, students are still late.
Yeah.
We had a question about, and several times it's come up, about moving back the high school start time. And so last spring, we had a group of seniors that did a research project on this, and they started digging in the data. And what they found was, well, if you look at our Thursday attendance when we have late starts, we still have students that aren't coming to school. So it really didn't make a difference in those days. So
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting there too. But some of the things that they've addressed, transportation is an issue. We talked about that, and I agree. Discipline is ineffective.
To Memo's point, discipline's ineffective.
Yeah.
They mentioned the Project Skip, right?
Yeah.
That they felt like that would be something that would be highly effective for some of their peers.
Yes, everybody's familiar with that one. Can you guys tell us just a little bit about what that even is?
Yeah, Project Skip is a program that is in the Johnson County District Attorney's Office. So when the schools in the county file a truancy case, so that means a student has either missed 3 days consecutive in a month, or 5 in a semester, or they get to 10 days unexcused. Then by state statute, we refer that to the district attorney. That is out of compliance with the law for compulsory attendance. So if they are a student that has not had truancy filed before, they would be a candidate before the case gets taken to the court to see a judge to go into Project Skip, where they are put into a mentor situation. There's also a peer court that they go, kind of a peer panel, to talk before their peers about why they're not coming to school, and they have to answer questions. So there's some education behind that. And then if they complete that program successfully, then they would not necessarily proceed to the court.
Yep.
Seems like a great alternative to discipline, the teaching component of that.
Some restorative practices
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. And I know that's something that you're in tune to, and as well as all of your 6 attendance specialists, and it's in our strategic plan as well.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
Yeah. So we need to be wrapping up here in a little bit. We're kind of running out of time. Memo, anything else that you see on this list that kind of calls out to you?
The don't care part, the don't care part, not going to college, etc. I try to remind these students that a high school diploma goes a long way. I was one of those late starters as far as going to college. I didn't graduate college till I was 38 years old. But the good thing was I got my diploma. Right. I could go back, and I tell them this story. I'm like, you don't know what you're going to want to do when you're 38 years old. Mm-hmm. I said, trust me, I didn't know that when I was 18, and I was saying the same thing they were. I said, just get it done. You're here. You can work. You have the rest of your life to work. So I try to motivate them by experience.
I love that motivation. I love those connections, those relationships. And we've talked a little bit about the punitive side, and there needs to be some of that. But really, what we want to have happen is for it not to get to that point where we built relationships, the kids feel a need and an urgency to come to school. They want to come to school. So that's really, to me, where we're at and why we're doing this program. So thanks to both of you for everything you've done. Christy, this is really your vision. So thank you so much for everything that you did to put this together. And Memo, I only hear amazing things about you. So
Thank you.
Thanks so much for everything you do. Dr. Gonzer, anything else you want to add?
No, it's tremendous. It's really neat. Again, learning a lot as we dive into this, but just really appreciate what you said about digging into the why, right? The why is so important. Thanks for taking the time to do that with our students. Yeah.
All right, ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I could talk about this a lot longer, but I think we kind of have to. So.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about what our next episode's going to be.
Yeah, and sorry, this was my part. And I was, right.
Hey,
so new
whatever
episodes of the show will drop every other week. I was so entrenched in the conversation.
Understand.
You can check out past episodes on smsd.org. Send us story ideas for feedback. Of course, we want this to be a place for our supportive community where they can engage with us and where we can answer a lot of questions. So the next episode, why don't you do this one? Why don't you talk about this? This was your thought.
Happy to.
Yeah.
I'm excited. We are going to celebrate the performing arts in our district, so specifically music education. This is the season where we have all of our band festivals, choral festivals, all these great gatherings that are centered around music education throughout the district. So we're going to go participate in some of the rehearsals and talk to some students and get to be a part of one of those celebrations. And these are just so cool because they are, pre-K through 12th grade, a whole feeder pattern. So to see, and it's really the whole community that comes together to celebrate the arts. So we're going to go take part.
Yep, and we got so many talented kids out there. Be a chance to showcase them again.
Yes.
Yep. So before we leave, we're switching some roles here, Dr. Gonzo.
I
This
like
is great.
We're mixing it up.
Credits for just a huge thank you to McKenna Campbell, music tech student at East, for the credits for the music. Of course, to our communications team for bearing with us on a long episode and a really good episode. But thanks to them for all of their great work. And why don't you talk about the featured photo?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is pretty cool. Different kind of all in, right? We were talking about kind of all in for the family, right? So this is Britt Shearer and her daughter at the North-South football game. Love anytime that we can get our families incorporated into, what we do and see them out there having a good time. So Sophia from John Deemer Elementary School. It says she doesn't cheer with any of the Shawnee Mission South elementary teams, but she prefers to dance over cheering because she wanted to watch the football game. So I thought that was
So Britt's all in as a teacher at North. Sophia's all in as a student in the South area, and they're coming together as one Shawnee Mission and all in. So
they look like they're having a ton of fun.
Having a ton of fun. I was at the game and I saw all those girls and they were having an amazing time. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks to Dr. Z and Memo. We'll be back in a couple weeks. And remember that we're one Shawnee Mission and we are all in.